Hi, everybody. Nice to have you with us today. Welcome. And really pleased to have you. And thank you for your interest in the Williamson Community Leadership Program. My name is Catherine Ellis. I'm the CEO of Leadership Victoria. I use she, her pronouns. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are all on Aboriginal land. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Wurundjeri lands, which I'm on, and pay respects to the leadership, storytelling and teaching of all First Nations people and to elders past and present. Leadership Victoria accepts the invitation of the Uluru Statement from the Heart to walk together with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. And this land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So it's great to have you here with us. Today, we are going to run through a little bit of an agenda. Firstly, just talk a little bit about Leadership Victoria, then the actual Williamson experience. And we have a couple of Williamson Fellows with us to talk to you about their experience, which is great. I'll introduce them shortly. And then obviously we have some question time. So we're very excited to talk to you. I'm very excited. Oh, no, sorry. Let me introduce the LV team first. So with us, we have Dr. Katie McDevitt, who is the faculty lead for the Williamson Community Leadership Program. She runs it together with John Eddy, who's an associate. And also Tara Crow, who's our partnership and business development lead, and Nkosi Love, who is our communications and marketing lead. They're all people that you will engage with, hopefully, over the coming weeks and beyond that as well. So I'm really excited to talk to you about the Williamson program because I am a fellow of Williamson myself. I did it in 2007, and then I came in as CEO just short of a year ago, and I'm really pleased to be in this role because part of what I get to do is support other people to have the same experience that I had, which changed my life really personally and professionally. And it transforms the life of so many people, this program. And Leadership Victoria is really focused towards an inclusive, equitable and sustainable society. And our role in that is really about bringing together leaders from all kinds of sectors, backgrounds, identities, and developing them, connecting them and inspiring them to tackle society's complex and systemic problems. The program was originally created in 1990 to support leaders to build their awareness about community and think about how they could better utilise their expertise and their resources and their time to strengthen the communities that they operated in and lived in. And it also builds a really strong network of connected and purpose-driven leaders. And many of these graduates over the 35 years that the program's been running are now in really significant leadership positions across Victoria and beyond. And from my cohort, my 2007 cohort alone, the current Chief Police Commissioner, Shane Patton, Williamson Fellow from my group, also the CEO of the Royal Children's Hospital, and a corporate leader who's now on the board of Australia Post and chairman of the Australian Ballet. And that's just 3 out of 34. And you'll be hearing from a couple of other Williamson Fellows a bit later on this session, as I said. And the program's been running for 35 years, and the original essence is really there. Though, of course, it has evolved over time, and we aim always to have very strong and contemporary leadership development component to the program, as well as what we call our special sauce, which includes things like hearing from seasoned speakers, visiting community in immersives, and building very strong connections within the cohort to learn from each other. And I think that as the program's evolved over the years, what has also happened is there's been a recognition of how relevant this kind of leadership that we do, and we have a very strong focus on adaptive leadership in the program, how relevant it is to the way businesses, government departments, community organisations are needing to operate in today's world, because what it's doing is it's equipping leaders with the skills to really navigate the very dynamic and complex challenges that we're facing. It emphasises flexibility and resilience, empathy, and very much a continuous learning mindset. And that's so important today when our society is facing so much rapid change and uncertainty, complexity. Every organisation is dealing with partners and diverse stakeholders. Innovation and creativity is so important to staying on top of things. And at the same time, we're all trying to do better on cultural sensitivity and make sure that our teams are able to deal with resilience and change, and making sure that we've also got to focus on our long-term sustainability. So adaptive leadership, it's very different from technical leadership, which is here's the problem, here's the solution, let's implement it. It's about problems and challenges and systemic issues that really have no easy answer, and that we are and we're building the leaders' capabilities and capacity to engage on those issues. And I think Williamson really changed the way I managed myself and how I worked with difficult colleagues and stakeholders, how I thought about my work and its impact in the world. And I feel like I see that with all of the participants in the program. It's really encouraging you to look upwards and outwards in your leadership rather than inwards and downwards. And that's so important as people move into senior roles and as we all start thinking about how we can contribute more extensively to our communities. And the program's also an amazing opportunity to build deep connections with a really diverse group of intelligent, curious mid-career leaders who really care about what's going on in the Victorian community. And so one of the beauties of that, obviously, is that you are building deep connections with people who often have very different perspectives than you do. And you hear from seasoned leaders who also have different life and professional experiences and perspectives. And all of that challenges you to think differently and builds your ability to work productively and respectfully with people who are very different from yourself. So that's a little bit about my experience. Leadership Victoria itself is a not-for-profit organisation. We're a charity registered with the ACNC, and we're also a registered social enterprise, which is very important for some organisations to know that they're working with an organisation that is really here for the greater good. So I'm going to stop there and hand over to my colleague, Dr. Katie McDevitt, who is the faculty lead for the Williamson program, as I said, and she's going to talk about the 2025 program. Thanks, Katie.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for setting me up so nicely to talk a little bit more about the experience that leaders coming into Williamson can expect. And you just saw on screen a visual that showed you the current reality moving upwards into a future state. So how do we actually support each cohort of leaders in Williamson to bridge that gap, to prepare themselves to make the kind of change that we think is possible and needed in the world today? So as Catherine's indicating, there are deep individual development opportunities available in Williamson, and I'm sure that Cameron and Krithika will speak to some of those. We're doing this in service of making big change in the places where it matters in society and in communities Victoria-wide. So I'm just going to speak for a few minutes about how some of that comes together to help visualize that a little bit. And I'm here for questions if you do have thoughts about what I'll share towards the end of the session. And you can see here some of the current and previous cohort undertaking various fun activities in the program. The program is very experiential. It is very collaborative, and it's all built around approaches that support leaders to do quite deep inner development work. So tackling not just their technical leadership competencies, but actually asking them to look at their values, their beliefs, how they show up in their meaning making in the world. How do they make sense of the leadership challenges that are before them so that they can identify all of the places where they can work with impact in the world around them? So balancing inner development work with outer change work. And we like to think that we hit that sweet spot in Williamson in various ways. So it's not just about how do we develop the skills to operate in amongst complex leadership challenges. It's actually about how do we draw on the right parts of ourselves to engage others and mobilize them for the kind of change that we want to see. So we do have 5 leadership principles in Williamson and 4 leadership competencies. We believe that leadership is an activity and not a position, and we bring that all the way through the program. We have a core curriculum, if you like, that we step through in the course of the program, which allows leaders to explore how they manage themselves, how they diagnose different situations. So, how do they figure out what's happening around them? How do they energize and mobilize others? And then, how do you intervene in skillful ways to make change? So, the coverage of the program is quite broad, but also cohesive in that way. And through the program, we move through several related program elements that then come together. We have 6 leadership days in which we explore those competencies and principles that I was just talking about. Those are on a Saturday. You can see them on the screen now. Those are the green boxes. And we bring one of the competencies into focus each time. If you were to think about group work and collaborative activities, much more so than training and workshops, that would give you a flavour of what's happening on those days. We have 6 theme days as well. Those are the blue boxes on screen. And we've hand selected and curated a number of really big, resonant, juicy themes for the leaders in the cohort to focus on, which are belonging, privilege, power and agency, and prosperity and enchantment. So we're investigating values-based ways of looking at leadership, belonging and privilege. We're investigating systemic and structural ways to make sense of the system, power and agency. And then we're moving into thinking about the future. How do we generate prosperity for more people? And in enchantment, how do we actually sustain ourselves as leaders for that work longer term? So those are very important components. In pink on the screen are the 4 immersives. And we top and tail the year in Marysville on Taungurung country with a welcome immersive, getting everyone set up, and a closing immersive, drawing everybody together and setting goals for beyond the program. And then in May, we have our first regional in Shepparton and the Goulburn Valley region country. And in August, we have our second residential out west on the Great South Coast in Warrnambool, Eastern Mar country. And those are times for going deeper, for synthesizing, for reflecting on what you're getting from the program, and also for coming together as a community to think about what work shall we actually do together. The final part that I'll just mention before I draw to a close is the collective leadership work that's possible in the program. And in our leadership days and in and around the program, we have a very special leadership challenge opportunity for each cohort of leaders, in which they identify a really big, challenging, complex leadership challenge that they want to work on. They pitch that to their colleagues in the program, and they group around that and collaborate to make progress on that leadership challenge through the rest of the year. And often those are the vehicles for leaders to continue to work together after the close of the program. Someone said to me towards the end of last year's program, I thought I was signing up for a program, but now I feel that I've joined a movement. And it is that sense of coming together and forming a network so that you can make change more powerfully together that I think many people take forwards. So I'm very keen to have conversations with all of you about what you might find for the leaders in your organisation from what I've just shared. And I'll be around till the end of the session. So thank you for listening to me. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Katie. I think we'll move straight now into hearing from our Williamson Fellows. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Cameron Mcleod, who did Williamson in 2013. And he is the CEO of The Huddle, which I'm sure he'll tell you about, so I won't explain it, at the North Melbourne Footy Club. And then we'll move to Krithika Hansen, and Krithika's Williamson Fellow from 2019, so more recent. And she is the Chief People Officer at Telstra Super. Over to you, Cameron. Thanks.
Thanks for the warm introduction, Catherine, and probably to echo your words along with Katie's. I'm really excited to be here because I think the Williamson program and Leadership Victoria more broadly is also a community. And I've certainly drawn on those communities and the knowledge and the networks of those people for the last 10, 11 years. So I was part of the Williamson program in 2013, and I didn't quite understand the significance of values, and didn't really articulate clearly at that time what my purpose was. But in the spirit of what Katie mentioned there, that leadership is not a position, I'd love to share with you all my purpose, and that is to change the world through the power of sport. And the work that I do at the Huddle, which is the community arm of the North Melbourne Football Club, is really about strengthening education and employment pathways for young people from diverse backgrounds. I wasn't able to clearly articulate that at the time when I started to embark upon my leadership journey through LV, but now I feel really comfortable in doing so. And a big part of that is because of the tools and the support that was given to me by my colleagues and also the faculty at LV to truly lean into what my own story is and the connections, I think, to my community. I'll talk maybe a little bit about that a little bit later on. But before I do, when I first joined the program in 2013, I was leading a large group of people in public policy within the state government. And I thought I knew what leadership was, but it was pretty narrow. It was really about reducing risks for government. It was responding to ministerial needs. It was about sharing scarce resources to solve complex problems that are important in our communities. But really, I had no experience or knowledge around what is adaptive leadership. And I think the opportunity to experience communities in the places where they live, where they learn, where they work, where they worship, and where they play, gave me a far bigger horizon to learn from, and to also meet with many different people. We had 40 in our year, but 40 really amazing people who have different skills and knowledge and their own networks to really truly understand that the powers that we can bring and the opportunities that we can collaborate to actually make the places a much better, safer and prosperous for all. One of the really unique parts of the program for me was an initiative called True North. And True North is really about learning more about your own values and learning very much around the journey that you're on. It's not a destination. And one of the really unique parts there is sharing your own story. You will be asked to become comfortable being uncomfortable. And with your permission, I'll share a little bit more about my story because I feel now comfortable in doing so. But the reasons why I am so grateful to sport is I think because it helped me and my family keep out of harm's way. So I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity when I was 15 to travel to the US and go on a scholarship to play basketball. And it wasn't until I arrived back home that I realised just how atypical my home was. And LV gave me the opportunity to explore that through this process. I grew up in an environment where, unfortunately, substance abuse and family violence, homelessness and suicide are actually common threads and form part of my generational tree, if you like. But it was the training that I did at the basketball club, and it was the car rides that my mum and I took. It was the games that I did on the weekend or the tournaments that we went to. They were safe places for both my mum and I to understand each other and to connect with each other really deeply. And now I know the power of sport because of that opportunity, but I couldn't clearly articulate that before 2013. And that really helped me to get clearer in terms of my own purpose and the values that I potentially can bring to help others, those that are maybe less fortunate than myself. I'm really grateful for other leadership opportunities that I've had. And a lot of those other leadership opportunities that I have had have been teaching me how to solve complex problems. But I think that the leadership opportunity from the Williamson program taught me very much around how I could be more curious and to put myself in the shoes of others. And one final example, if I may, and it took place only a few years ago through the COVID hard lockdown, which I might also add, many of the colleagues that I went through the program with were also working on. I was working very closely with the high-rise residents located in North Melbourne and Flemington, 9 social housing towers, 3,000 residents made up of about 160 different cultural groups. They were forced into a hard lockdown with no notice by the Victorian Police, almost reminiscent of them fleeing war-torn countries. They were forced into their homes at no notice. And unknown what was going to happen in the next 24 hours, let alone the next 2 weeks. There were a lot of issues as it related to this, the emergency management of that site and helping those communities to be free from COVID and the spread of COVID. But we worked really closely with each other, and we had the opportunity of engaging with young people to form part of the emergency management team, which I probably wouldn't have thought about unless I had the experiences from LV. There was a lack of insight and knowledge around who was living in those homes. There was a lack of cultural competencies, particularly in delivering and supplying food for those residents. Muslims were being served pork. There was a lack of translation in terms of the contents that were on the packaging. Some of the meals were thawed and outdated by up to 12 months. These are really complex issues that, to the best of their endeavours, the emergency management team was trying to support those residents, but they didn't have the expertise of community. And fortunately, I was able to form part of that emergency management team and make some suggestions and to really influence without authority. Another leadership lesson that I did definitely learn from LV, and to encourage them to engage with community in a more positive and more connected way, with a couple of members from my community who are also young people to actually form part of that group. And it was through their insights and their knowledge that unlocked the potential of community supplying foods to their residents. And that helped build trust. And that trust, I think, was really significant in the context of actually helping people to be safe and free from COVID and to have those tests to be undertaken by the medical professionals. But without anyone opening up their doors because of those young people, I think that would have been a much different scenario. I think in terms of being able to deal with complex social economic issues, I certainly was very comfortable in leaning upon the lessons that I'd learned and building upon the networks through the Williamson program and the LV more broadly to help me and those communities actually deal with complex issues during that time. So I want to say big thanks to LV. It is a wonderful network, and I'm grateful for the opportunity of actually sharing a little bit more about what it's helped me do in the past 10 plus years.
Wow, Cameron, thanks so much for sharing that and for being so generous with the story of your life and what you got from Williamson. I hadn't heard all that myself, and this is, again, one of the beauties of this program is people develop the level of kind of trust and awareness that you can actually become vulnerable yourself and share what's going on in your life as part of learning what is happening in your community and beyond it as well. Thanks so much. So now I'm going to hand straight to Krithika Hansen from Telstra Super to tell us about her Williamson experience.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here. Cameron, that's an incredible story and a hard act to follow in sharing my reasons for why I did Williamson. I had known about Leadership Victoria for about 20 years. I had worked at Coles in their learning and development team, and I knew Coles had put quite a few of their senior leaders through it. And what was really interesting was watching these managers when they'd come back from the different modules and their experiences and their looks on their faces and how they would talk about what that meant. And I remember thinking, I have to have this I just put it in the back of my mind, and I thought, you know what, this is a program that one day I do want to do, because for me, it was very much about understanding me as an individual, but also what kind of leader can I be and how can I actually give back to the community? Because I come from a very traditional corporate background. And so what does that mean when you're in such a corporate space? How do you then translate that back into the community space? And where can your skills and your knowledge, how can that align? It was something that was always there. It was percolating. I'd followed LV for a little while and I thought, all right, when is the right time? Because one of the pieces of advice that I got from one of the participants years ago was, you've got to be ready for it. So it's not something that you can just go and do, because it's not as Katie described, it is not a technical program. It's not a tick the box. It's actually something that's going to deeply unravel you and put you back together in a different way. And you've got to be ready for that. And so I think for me, it was a question of when is that right time? And I progressed on growing my career for a little while, and I got to a point where I felt I was working in a real bubble. So I was working in a professional services organization. I loved what I did. I had lots of great opportunities. I worked with great people, but there was this niggling feeling that I was in a bubble and I only was seeing one form of leadership. And I just thought something's just not right here. And that's when I remembered from many years ago about Williamson. And I thought, all right, now is my time. And I also was ready to be incredibly uncomfortable because I knew this was going to make me very uncomfortable. So I thought, all right, let's do this. And so in 2019, I did the Williamson program. And I have to say, it completely shifted my whole view of what leadership is and what it could be. I saw it in all its different forms and shapes, and I was so inspired and just in awe of the work that people are doing out there. Because being in professional services, it is very much a very privileged place to be. And I don't think I fully understood any of that. I don't think I fully appreciated any of that. And going on the Williamson program really opened my eyes. And yeah, Cameron talked about the true north. That was certainly something that got me thinking about who I am and where were the moments in my life where things shifted and changed. And it really came to life for me when we did the day on privilege. So one of the themes is on privilege. And I have to say, I still think about it today. I still talk about it today. I use it in so many conversations. We'd gone to visit Port Phillip Prison. That was our experience. And I did it because I was scared. I had never been to a prison. I didn't even know what it was like. I have teenage boys, and I thought, oh my gosh, I never, ever want my children. I don't want that to be even by simple mistakes that they might make. And I thought, no, I'm going to go do this. So I did the prison experience, and I was blown away by the leadership shown by the prisoners in this particular unit that we went to visit. And what was incredible was the lady who was doing this work had been in the prison service for quite a number of years. The way she navigated the naysayers, the way she navigated the people that threatened her life and her family's life, the way that she navigated how hard it was, this program that she was doing to help the prisoners rehabilitate themselves and to give them another pathway when they left the prison. And how proud these male prisoners were of to be part of this unit, because they knew they were in a very special place compared to everybody else that was there, and how much they valued that privilege of being there. And what was really interesting was when we finished that and we had our leadership day the next day, and then I built some beautiful friendships and connections as part of being in the Williamson program. I was chatting to a few of the fellow participants, and I literally had a moment where I went, oh my God, I can tell you exactly when my privilege changed. And it was, interestingly enough, when I moved to Australia, I wasn't married, but I got married when I came to Australia, and my last name changed. I'm of Indian background. I had a very different last name, and I married a Danish guy. So hence I'm a Hansen. And I didn't think much of it, to be honest. I just thought I'm higher up in the alphabet. And I wasn't really thinking much more when I took the last name. But in that moment, I realized all of a sudden, when I had changed, I went from not getting job interviews to getting job interviews. I went from not getting job offers to getting job offers. I went from, all of a sudden, it was easy to say my name. And I thought, wow, this is absolutely incredible when you think about what's in a name and what it can do and how it can move you forward. And so that experience at Port Phillip Prison was profound. It sits so deep within me, and I always think of it. There are so many beautiful components of doing the Williamson program, but that one is a standout for me. And I think as I went through the program, I realized really quickly that the organization I was in was not the right organization for how I wanted to exercise leadership, because it opened me up in so many different ways. And whilst I had an incredible career and I was ready to make my next move, that was just the timing worked out that way. It wasn't anything else. I made a conscious decision to look at organizations where I could be the leader I wanted to be, where I could use the awareness, I could use my voice, I could use the learnings from my true north to work on who I was, and in turn be able to influence and shape the environments I work in. Because of the nature of my role, I actually have a really big say in what the culture and how an environment can be. And I thought, I want to be in organizations where I get to do that kind of work. And I think that was probably one of the things that has evolved. And then I also ended up joining a few boards because, again, I wanted to bring it up at a different level around how are we looking at the shape of an organization and what does leadership needs to look like, regardless of where the organization's working in. So for me, leadership, Victoria, and the Williamson program, it was a life-changing experience. There are always things that come up on my daily basis that I just think, oh, I remember that from that, or I remember that. And I have to say the friendships and the deep connections have just been unbelievable, and incredibly grateful for that. So thank you. And I'll hand it back to you, Catherine.
Thanks, Krithika. That's such an interesting story as well. And I would absolutely reiterate what your last comment there about the deep friendships and enduring relationships. I'm still very close to a number of people I did Williamson with 17 years ago. And in fact, we caught up for lunch last weekend. So and one of them I was helping do interview practice with because she was going for a new job. So they're personal connections, they're professional connections, and there's an amazing overlap. And I think that the sort of the points that you were making around, I would say that it's really important to understand that everyone's experience of Williamson is very different. And for that reason, it's very hard for us to explain exactly what it is and what it will do for any particular individual. And so a lot of it is what you bring, a lot of it is who you do it with, a lot of it is what is going on for you in your professional life and where your aspirations are. I would also agree with you that the point about like bits still standing out really clearly years later. I remember on one of the immersives, we went to Gippsland actually for one of my immersives, and we visited the CSIRO research facility there, and that I can still picture listening to the chief scientist talking about sustainability and methane emissions and the way we all needed to change our practices. And another one for me was we had an AFL footy coach speak to us, which I was leading a youth-focused not-for-profit at the time, and I would never have thought that an AFL footy coach would have the moment of wisdom that changed everything for me that year. But what he said, and I won't say because it's Chatham House rules, but what he said really helped me deal with a very significant issue I was dealing with in my leadership at that time. And then years later, another organisation, very complex situation. And again, the wisdom that I got from that footy coach helped me be resilient. It helped me protect my team. It helped me embed a lot of the change and the really great work that we had done in a very difficult environment. I never would have been able to do that without Williamson. I think that those kind of, and actually you mentioned working at Coles. I had a Coles executive in my Williamson cohort, and he said to me, and I'm sure he won't mind me sharing this, we had a union leader in our cohort as well, and they got to know each other quite well. And he told me that it really helped him in his career after that, because he was one of the very few people in his executive team in big corporates who understood unions and could talk to union people because of the relationship that he had built with that union leader during Williamson. So there's all kinds of ways that it manifests, and again, very different for each person. So what I'm going to do now is stop talking from our side and open the floor up. Really keen to hear any questions that you may have and anything that we can help you to understand Williamson, what it might mean for you or your organisation, the process of recruitment and selection. Anything that you'd like to know, please just speak up or put your hand up. We maybe take it off me, Cozy, and show everybody. Yeah, great, thanks. Got lots of people with cameras off today. I hope that, here we go. Danielle, nice to see you. It's been a long time. Oh, you've got your microphone off.
Thanks, Catherine. And sorry, I arrived a little late and I wasn't certain why all the cameras were off. It was one of those group progressions. I just wanted to say a thank you to everyone who shared. And so I put comments in the chat, and that includes you, Catherine. I haven't typed it in yet. I always am grateful to hear your experience and story. And I also just wanted to reply to what you'd asked, Catherine. At the moment, I feel like I have plenty of information from the information that is available regarding the Williamson program online. But I'm curious to hear questions that other people might have too.
While we're waiting for that lucky first person, I've just shared in the chat, but if anyone does want to type a question and that's easier for you from where you are, please feel free and we'll call those out and work through them. So don't be shy. Do use whatever method you prefer. And right away we have one from Caroline. Catherine.
Go ahead, Caroline.
She's shared in the chat for you.
Oh, sorry, I haven't got the chat open full screen.
It's all right. So in terms of candidate profile, how important is existing community engagement in the selection process?
It's important and it's not. So, and that's probably not a very good, I guess the answer is depends. Generally, people who are ready for Williamson, starting to think about how can I contribute to my community, or how can my organisation contribute or engage better with community, those sort of questions. But sometimes they actually haven't taken a step, or they are trying to work out how to take that step. And I have a lot of sympathy for that myself. I spent the first 12 years of my career in the private sector, and Krithika talked about working in a bubble. I also felt like I was in a real bubble, and I didn't know how to go about finding ways to contribute. And so I actually think Williamson is really great for people who haven't yet taken any significant steps into that space but are interested in doing it, because it's like drinking from a fire hose. You get so many exposure to so many different experiences and leaders and different ways of thinking that it actually helps you evolve your thinking around that community contribution significantly. Dung, did you have your...
Hi there. My name is Yul. I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand. You can tell I don't use Zoom as much as Teams.
Just wave at me. It's fine.
Good on. Thank you. Look, I'm in the public sector myself, and I think you'll know quite a lot of roles in the public sector tend to be quite short fixed term roles. I guess I'm planning ahead over a couple of years, not quite sure where I'll be, and trying to facilitate how I can invest in myself. In this role, I do a lot of volunteer work. I'm in the public sector. This is a really aligned role. What kind of pathways someone like myself, who is most likely going to need to be self-invested in this program, what kind of pathways I could be looking at to think about how I do that and what those opportunities are in the existing program?
So I'm not quite sure. Are you talking about in terms of what you're doing?
Yeah, no, it's more about investing.
Yeah,
it's more about investment, because I know this program tends to be partially invested by your employer and partially self-invested as well. I guess I'm really conscious. I'm not quite sure where I'll be in a couple of years, and really thinking through what are the options in terms of thinking through how I invest in this program.
Yeah, sure. So we have actually a variety of ways that people fund their participation in Williamson. Some people self-fund, some people have their organisations pay part and they pay part. Some organisations pay for their staff member to participate fully at the whole cost. So it's very different. And for people who self-fund, we do offer a payment plan option over the sort of part of the year because we understand that it is a really significant investment for people. And obviously it's tax deductible if you're self-funding too, so that's always nice. And I think that it's the way I would see it as someone who, if you're in a situation where you're not quite sure where you're heading for the next few years, it's actually a brilliant time to do it, because it gives you that space to think and experiment with who am I and what do I want to focus my energies and it also gives you all kinds of new connections and confidence to explore those connections that you wouldn't have otherwise in a sort of regular job. Is that the sort of information you're looking for?
Yeah, thank you so much, Catherine. Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. Santia?
Hello, everyone. My lighting is really bad today. I'm sorry. I was asking similar questions with Dung as well, and I'm pretty clear with the answer you've been given. But I'm just wondering, like myself, I've just on maternity leave, trying to get back into workforce. So when you said that you could ask with workplaces to pay partial sort of thing, so is it something that the workplace will always sort of in place they do this, or we can just raise it up to them and ask them, is it something that work invest in for?
Yeah, you would have to have that conversation with your workplace, definitely. And
Right.
we have a lot of organisations that really see significant value in putting their mid to senior leaders through Williamson, and year on year we'll put someone through, or a couple of people through every year. So organisations like ANZ and WorkSafe have put a lot of people through, Victoria Police, Vice Rescue Victoria, etc. The other thing I would say, and I'm sorry, I should have said this to you, Yung, is that the other conversation that you need to have with your organisation is around the time commitment, because it is pretty significant. As Katie said, some of the days are on Saturdays, so that's obviously your own time unless you have a shift job. And what some people do, so some organisations are very happy for you to have that time as professional development. Other people I know use annual leave to take the days to participate. But the important thing is that your organisation understands that you've taken on a really significant professional and personal development program, and that they're backing you to do that, because you do learn and change, and you will want to bring what you're learning back into the workplace and experiment with that. That's highly valuable to the organisation if they're backing you and they're aware of that and they can leverage it as well. So it's a win, but the conversation needs to be there, particularly if times when you get very busy, making sure that you're still making time to attend the days and the immersives and things is incredibly important, because we have quite a strict 80% participation requirement as well in order to graduate as a Williamson Fellow and become part of the LV alumni at the end of the year.
Perfect. Thank you.
If I may,
actually, what you will find is you will protect your Williamson time with every ounce of your being. And I know one of my cohort colleagues, his boss was pushing him to drop out because they were very busy, and he said, don't make me choose between this job and Williamson, because you will not like the answer. So I think that and he's someone who then took what he learned in Williamson back into his organisation and brought extreme value into it. And I can't share because of Chatham House, but I know that it was definitely worth his organisation backing him to do the program.
I just want to call out, we've had a couple of questions about how to position this, where you are. And we actually have a really supportive and engaged process. Tara is here on this call, Nkosi is here on this call. I think it's okay to offer as a team, if you do find that you need a word or just a sounding board conversation about what tactics should I be thinking about to make progress on this part of my application or this part of my thinking of how to engage an organization, we're here to have those conversations, right? And so don't feel that you're making your application by yourself. Do reach out and be proactive, because what you're thinking about, many other Williamson participants will also have thought through, and we hold a lot of that knowledge about how have people made it work. So I just want to call that out, noticing that a couple of people have got something in that area. We are here to help after today as well.
Absolutely. And I think one important part of positioning it is the comment I made before about moving to a leadership level where your leadership is upwards and outwards, and understanding that a really critical part of your leadership is actually learning how to engage with stakeholders who are not under your authority, and how to influence and engage and work constructively with them, particularly when they're people who potentially there's a contentious or very different kind of relationship that needs to be handled very carefully. Those sort of outcomes from the program are so valuable to organisations, particularly in this networked world that we work and live in today. Danielle, question?
Thanks, Catherine. I was just you triggered a question whilst you're chatting as well. And so you mentioned the time commitment that may be, it sounds like, during business hours. Can you please tell me a little more detail about that? Mm-hmm. So what sort of time commitment might interrupt a Monday to Friday job?
Sure. Yeah, so and maybe, Nkosi, can we go back to the program outline?
Oh, sorry if I missed it.
So I'll just talk to that. Yep. Be easier for people. I'm a very visual person myself, so I like to see things. Beautiful. So you can see in this program, it runs across 10 months. Each month the immersives are generally on Monday to Friday days. I think the closing immersive we run on a Friday, Saturday, but the others are on weekdays. And then The theme days are generally on a Friday, a Thursday or a Friday each. So there's one each month. The leadership days are on Saturday, and then the other activities are all out of hours. So then evenings and things, yeah.
Yeah, so that's very
yeah,
manageable.
So it's a manageable, it's a manageable commitment during office hours, but you do need to understand it's a commitment. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Catherine. And then,
sorry, Danielle, just
go, Katie. Yeah, go.
Oh, I was just going to add to that. In order to make the most of the Williamson days, a lot of Williamson leaders will also block out time for their pre-work and for, if you like, study or thinking time or team time relating to the program. So that will vary person by person, but you should make an allowance for when will I do my Williamson pre-activities and my groundwork to lead up to the program days. Yeah, and that will just need to fit around your other commitments.
Fantastic. Thank you, Katie. Thanks for sharing that insight as well. Is there another question in chat, or do I have time to ask one other question?
Caroline has a question, but we can come back to
you. Go.
Yeah, sorry, just a link to that point about the pre-work. So from the people who've gone through it, is that like an extra day or two around the sessions to prepare, or I'm trying to understand the length of time required before and to digest the outcome of the sessions as well, because you have to fit that as well into either your personal time or your work time.
Cameron, if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, you get a lot of pre-reading in between sessions, and it's pretty self-explanatory. It'll take you a few hours, but I think there's also that reflective time post each of the different sessions for you to really collect your thoughts and make some sense of it all. I think you're also then grouped up into little syndicates. I think there was about 7 syndicates in my year level, and that's a good opportunity for you to reach out and connect with some of your peers and really truly debate and discuss some of that work in the lead up to those sessions as well. But I found it very manageable. I almost did an MBA on public transport, so I just used my time really wisely. And I had 3 kids and managing a full-time job at the same time. I feel like it was very achievable. It's just about programming your day and your week.
It's very true. Danielle, did you have another question?
Thanks, Catherine. I was just wondering if you could please share, you've each mentioned the diversity in the cohort of people that come together in the Williamson program and then become a part of your network ongoing. I was wondering if you could share a little more detail about your experiences of that diversity. So what sort of industries do people come from?
Krithika, would you like to start on that one?
Yeah, sure. So I was part of the Williamson cohort where I think we were like 70 people or 75 people. And what happened was we got split into 2 groups. So my group was probably around the 35, 36. And there were times when the whole group came together. In my program, we did a trip to Canberra. All of us went to Canberra together. All the beginning and the end was all together. So it was just interesting where we got to separate. But I think if I think about my smaller group of about 35, we had a real mixture of people. So we had people from corporates, we had people from community, we had people from local government, we had people from universities, hospitals, the ballet, the theater. So it was just really wide ranging. And everybody in that group was probably more at the senior level was where this particular group was in, and all different. Some people were married, some people were single, some were potentially towards the end of their career, but wanted to do some things to give back. Some were probably on their career path, if that makes sense. So like Cameron, I have 3 children, and so I did it with the 3 children. You just have to be really organized to do it. So you just have to get all your logistics and everything set. And then there's actually a lot of time to do it if you can get yourself organized to manage yourself. But no, it was wide ranging. And if I think about the friendships that have emerged from that, really wide ranging, I have to say, from all different industries, all different backgrounds.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you.
Cameron, did you want to add to that?
Oh, no, I think Kika probably summed that up pretty well. Yeah. But I think the friendships probably is useful. I'm in the job that I'm in now because of Williamson alum. and that is Dr. Sonia Hood, who's actually the president of the North Melbourne Football Club now. She was in the role prior to me being in the current role. I think that there's also that opportunity to build that network out. And for those that are uncertain about what their career pathways may be, it may be a great opportunity to invest in yourself, because who knows what will come out of that.
That's true.
Excellent. Thanks, Cameron. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that from a diversity point of view, we have a bigger focus now on making sure that they're bigger. But we certainly have a focus on trying to make sure that there are First Nations participants in the cohort, disabled leaders in the cohort, so that those people having access to this kind of program, but also they're bringing their knowledge and their networks in and really opening people's eyes up a lot in those spaces as well. And I was going to say one other thing. It's gone out of my mind now. Anyway, been that important.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Any other questions? Brendan, Alison, Nuri, Amber? Okay.
I was just going to jump in and say that, just to reiterate what Katie had said about if anyone has any questions or you're unsure or you're at the beginning of this application process as well. And I was wondering if Cameron or Krithika could also cast their minds back to that time when they too were weighing up the options. What were the things that kind of maybe got you over the line there in knowing that this was worthwhile and something that you needed to do? I know, Krithika, you talked about the timing had to be right. Cam, was there something that was also there for you in that period?
Yeah, I think that I spent a little bit of time actually meeting with as many people who have done the program as possible to understand all the questions that have been asked of us today, and also to understand what was LV looking for in me. And so to be able to spend some time to craft that application and to really give some consideration in terms of why me. So to think really critically about the contribution that I can make, but also being really open and vulnerable to what I can learn about myself and learn about others. That was the key message that I think that came out of the conversations that I had with others. And I think it's been touched upon, but this is a program that will be ready for you when it's ready for you. And I don't think you should procrastinate. If you've got an inkling for it, I think put your hand up high and go through the process. It may take a couple of years to get through, and that was certainly the case with a couple of colleagues, and it's not uncommon. So don't see that as a rejection. This is a very highly sought after leadership program, but being part of the process, I think, is also part of the journey. So I just encourage people that if you are unsuccessful in this first intake, don't be discouraged by that. I think that's just about learning a little bit more about when your time may be, seek some feedback from the team at LV, and then go through that process again when it's the right time for you. But don't wait either. Put your hand up high and just get out there and give it a go.
Yeah, it's really good advice, Cameron. Thank you. And I think that there's a lot of talk about imposter syndrome these days. I would say don't self-censor. If you are excited about this, apply. As Cameron said, you may not get in the first time. I didn't get in the first time I applied. I did get into Harvard the first time I applied. So there you go. There's the comparison, which is what I went and did after I had a year or two after I'd done Williamson, because I wanted more and I was inspired by the program. Yeah, really think about it. And if it's something that's exciting for you and you think it'd be a great investment, or if those of you who work in HR and are looking for your organisations, if you have people within your organisation who you think that this would step them up into that whole next level that they have the potential to take on, then I would say I really encourage you to step forward now.
Can I just add to that, Catherine, as someone who's in the HR space and thinks about who to put on programs and things like that, I have to say, so when I made the decision to do it for myself, I recognized there were a couple of other people in my organization who I thought would benefit. And I have to say, one of the big things is you got to come with a really open mind, because you just don't know what it's going to give you and what lessons about yourself that you might learn in this process. And there were a couple of people in my organization. One was quite senior, one was an emerging leader, who were just asking questions in different ways at different times about who they were, who they wanted to be, what was their next step in their career, but more importantly, what was their next step in how they were going to show up in the world. It was really interesting. There were so many clues that came out, and I just thought, I think this is really the right program for you. Because like I said, it's not a tick the box. You've got to be ready for it, and you've got to be ready to be uncomfortable. And so when you're thinking about people, it's for someone to really get a lot out of it, you'll have the clues. Like, you'll already know if you are in that position and you're putting forward names, you'll know, because they'll be asking a different kind of question to somebody who's looking for a one-day leadership program. It'll be really obvious. And so just listen for those cues.
That's very true. So the only final thing I'll say is that we've talked a bit about different size cohorts during this session. For next year, we're looking at a cohort between 40 and 48 people. That's about the size. And we will be running a single group, not two like Krithika was talking about, partly because we think that people build stronger connections in a smaller group, more chance to engage with the speakers as well. And there's a lot of FOMO when different groups are going off to different experiences. We'll be running one single cohort, but within that, we actually slice and dice the group significantly through the year. So there's buddies of 2, there's peer groups who help run, like one peer group each month will help run the program and run the reflections and things. We have also the collectives that Cameron mentioned that work on when the group is broken up to work on big challenges, and Katie was mentioning as well. And across all of that, we have 2 home groups. So we split the group into 2, again, sometimes for smaller, more intensive group work. And so everyone belongs to those different groups and shifts and changes so that they're actually building really strong connections with as many people as possible within the cohort through the year as well. Okay, all right. If there are no more questions, I might just go
We just have one more on. Ree has just raised one more at the chat in terms of emerging leaders and how we interpret that for Williamson with lived experience more than senior positional experience, I would say.
So for Williamson, we ask that people have 10 or more years of leadership experience. That doesn't mean they have had to have a leadership role in an organisation, because a lot of people have leadership roles in community organisations, in sporting teams. A lot of people have leadership roles that are not an official title, where they are influencing within organisations. So we also really value people's lived experience as part of what they bring to the diversity of the cohort as well. We're very happy to hear the ways that people position themselves for that 10 years of leadership criteria. For emerging leaders who are very new to leadership, we have another program which is called the Igniting Leadership Program. It's a 5-day program that runs over about a month, so 2 days plus 2 days plus 1 day. And we run that 3 or 4 times a year. And there's one coming up in August. So that's much more suitable for someone who's just stepping into the leadership space. Williamson is for mid to senior leaders, and what people bring to the program is a very important part of it. So we're pretty strict about that criteria. But as I said, we interpret it fairly flexibly at the same time. Okay, all right. So I think we'll just go to our final slide just to give you a few next steps so that you're clear on where things are going. But as Katie said, Tara said, feel free to call and engage and ask more questions. We are holding another information session on the 3rd of July, and this is an in-person session. And Christine Nixon, who is our chair and was also previously the Chief Police Commissioner and as a leadership expert, is coming to that event, and we'll do a keynote. And we'll also have a couple more Williamson Fellows talking about their experiences and more in the room just to chat with people. So really encourage you to engage with the people around you, your organisation, your family, your community, about whether this is the right program for you, what it might mean for you and your organisation and your community. And get in touch if you have any questions. Applications are open now and they close on the 5th of August. You can start an application and come back to it multiple times to work on it. So feel free to do that. And there are a limited number of scholarships, which you can, as you fill out your application, you can tick if you want to be considered for one of those scholarships. And as I said, we encourage people from all kinds of backgrounds. We really focus on having a diverse cohort in terms of the sort of organisations and sectors people come from, the lived experience that people bring, the leadership and community experience people have had. So tell us as much as you can about all those things so that we can make sure we're considering you appropriately. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for being with us today. We've really, as you can probably tell, I love talking about Williamson and can bang on about it for hours. Super happy to talk to any of you who have any more questions. And other than that, we hope to see you or one of your staff applying for Williamson over the next few weeks. Thanks so much. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have thanked Krithika and Cameron. Thank you so much for giving us the time today to come and talk
That's
to
okay.
us through. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
It was
Thanks,
wonderful. Thanks,
Thanks so
Cameron.
much.
All right, everybody. See you soon. Thank you.